All right, AP Euro, here we go. This is the thing I've been trying to record for several days and keep having technological issues, but I'm going to try one more time, and even though it's last minute. So this is your outline. I shared with you a Google Doc the other day with all of this on it, and my recommendation then and now was to print this off and have it next to you while you write your essay for the AP exam. And if you can't print, then see if you can have a second device and turn that device, turn a device on that has this brought up on it, and then do your exam on a different device. So let's go through it. So before you get started with your AP test, so the question pops open. Take a deep breath. Make sure that you are calm, in a good place. If you find yourself like nervous, day of before taking this, burn some energy. Go for a run. Go for a bike ride. Do something to burn off that useless layer of adrenaline, so that you can really focus and be have a good state of mindfulness going in. So anyway, so the thing pops open. Here's your question. You got 45 minutes. Clock is ticking. Okay, so read the prompt. Read it carefully. Identify the task. Every example, every practice thing that they have given you so far, they've given you 6 practice questions, and I think all of them is a very like either or kind of question, where they'll say, was this primarily political or economic or whatever. Like it's sort of set up as a 2 ways of seeing it, and you have to take a side. Make sure that you do take a side. Every question that they give you will be viewable from multiple sides, from at least 2 and maybe more than 2 angles. But you need to take a position. Okay, so keep that in mind. So read the prompt, identify the task, figure out what you're being asked to take a position on. At this point, I would do your brainstorming for outside information, Persia or Sprite or Grapeyest or whatever acronym you want to use. I would try to put together a list, just a few things that you could talk about. Really what you're doing is you're brainstorming for your contextualization and for your historical evidence from beyond the documents. What else could you talk about that you need to do? And you only need to know a few things here, but if you get a question that you don't know hardly anything about, or you freeze up, you could easily take 2 or 3 minutes, pop on the internet, or in your textbook, I suppose, and just do a little quick research. You don't need to do much. Like even reading an introductory paragraph on like Wikipedia is probably going to be all you need in terms of giving you a few things you can talk about. Obviously, don't copy paste that, or they will catch it and you won't get a score, and you'll be considered plagiarizing. But just reading it, it's open notes. So don't, if you know nothing about the task, or the topic rather, then go ahead and do a couple minutes of research if you need to. Then I would make a T-chart. Remember, the task is probably going to ask you to choose one of 2 sides. So make a T-chart and then read the documents. And as you read the documents, put a little X's or numbers or whatever in the T-chart, showing which documents could most easily be used on which side. And you may have documents that you could argue either side, and that's great. Like if you can use a document either way, that's awesome. That's really helpful to you. Okay, read all the documents before you settle on a claim. I've noticed with at least 2 or 3 of the practice essays they've given you, the claim that would seem obvious when you first see the question is not the easiest to defend once you actually read the documents. Particularly the first couple about was the Catholic Church intolerant of science? I thought 4 of the 5 documents in that one clearly supported the Catholic Church being tolerant. So anyway, you can argue either side. There's not a right or wrong answer, but in my opinion, there's usually an easier or harder claim to defend, and I would encourage you to choose the one that's easiest to defend. All right, so now we're ready to start writing. This whole process has probably taken us 10 minutes, I would say. Like if we've got to read the documents and come up with everything, like that takes a while. 10 or 15 minutes is not inappropriate for getting ready to write. We still have a half hour at least to write, so let's start writing. Okay, so the first paragraph we often picture as an inverted pyramid, meaning the wider end is at the top and it narrows down. We're going to start with some contextualization. Contextualization asks you to discuss some of the broader events going on before this period. So it's not anything from this period doesn't count. This is before the period, what led up to this. And as the teachers in the online videos have kept stressing, you need to include specific facts in this. You cannot get away with just broad, oh, and there were some wars, and there were international conflicts, and kings were getting powerful, and peasants were poor. You're at zero there. Like that's nothing, because it's always true, and it could be guessed at by anybody with even a rudimentary understanding of European history. You need facts and details. Use names, use specific inventions, use specific terminology, the sort of stuff that you would get on the front of a flashcard. That's what you want to use. Okay, so 2 or 3 sentences of contextualization, everything that led up to this moment of whatever the question is, and then boom, we're going to take a claim, we're going to take a stand. We're going to choose one side, one way of seeing this, and we are going to defend it. We are not going to go out and say, well, it's kind of this and it's kind of that. If you do that, you will not get credit for the claim, because the prompt already implies that it could be seen this way or that way. If you simply repeat that it could be seen this way or that way, you're not taking a stand. You're not making a claim. So make a claim. It doesn't have to be the one you most believe. It needs to be the one you can most easily defend using these documents. And of course, your claim must include a line of reasoning. These are 2 or more because statements. So such and such is true because of this and because of that. Okay, and what you're doing there is you're outlining your body paragraphs. All right, so make sure that you have that line of reasoning, or you will not get credit for your claim, even if you do take a stand. You've got to have a line of reasoning. Notice I've included on this page body paragraph 1. The start of body paragraph 1 is its topic sentence is tied to your line of reasoning above, and that's why I put them in the same color. Is because whatever your first because statement is becomes the basis of your topic sentence for body paragraph 1, and your second because statement becomes the basis of your topic sentence for body paragraph 2. Okay, so that's how you're going to set this opening paragraph up. And if you've done this well, you've got 2 points. You've earned your contextualization point, and you've got your claim plus line of reasoning point. So we're at 2 out of 10. Let's jump to a body paragraph. Okay, the order of the things in this paragraph can be shuffled around, but they kind of travel in pairs. So yellow and green is a pair, then the yellow and green is a pair, the light blue and green is a pair, and then the dark blue and purple is a pair. But those pairs can be shuffled in any order. So we're going to use a document, and by use we mean summarize the content of the document. You can use a quote, but quoting will not earn credit for usage. So if you want to use a quote, you need to still then follow, like you can use a quote to set up your own explanation of what that quote means. But if you just use a quote, you don't get credit for using that document, because it is all you've done is repeat. All you've done is copy, and it doesn't show that you understand it. Like I could give that document to my 7-year-old and say, copy it out. He doesn't have to understand it, but he could copy it. So if you just copy it, you haven't shown understanding. So explain it, explain what the content is, and then make sure that you, next sentence, support your argument with it. So you say this, the author of this document, so-and-so, he says this, and that proves the point of whatever your topic sentence is, because of whatever. Later in this other document, Queen so-and-so writes this, that also shows that, again, tie back to your topic sentence and your claim. So support your argument with it. At some point in this paragraph, we'd like to bring in one piece of evidence from beyond the documents. And again, it just needs to be one. You have to explain it, but it just needs to be one piece of evidence from beyond the documents, something that's not in the documents that also supports your argument. And so you want a couple of sentences probably on that. And again, like your contextualization, you need facts, okay? And you can't just name drop something. You can't just say, and that led to the scientific revolution and move on, because you've dropped the name of the scientific revolution, but you haven't shown that you really understand anything about it. So explain a couple of things that the scientific revolution was all about. And then again, the reason I keep it in green is we're still using, pointing back to the topic sentence and thereby to the claim, supporting the argument. Also, at some point in this paragraph, we want to do one round of happy, which means analyzing why a particular person might say what they say. All right, so that's their historical situation, or their audience, or their purpose, or their point of view. And then why. Why does it matter to how we read the document? So we can say, hey, this person is writing to an audience of it's a private diary. So he's writing, the only audience is himself. He's writing a private letter to a friend. So because that is his audience, why does that matter? Well, we can trust that it's probably their really true opinion, that they're not just saying something for the public to consume, but that this is what they really think. Or we can say, well, this political party, they are socialists, so their purpose is to convert people to socialism. So when they are criticizing imperialism, it's probably it's because they want to convince people that imperialism is a bad thing, not just in their country, but around the world. Or this person is writing of the point of view of the prime minister. And so why does that matter? Well, what they say in this, when they're speaking, they have to speak for the entire French people and not necessarily take up side issues or not say things that might offend a significant chunk of the people. So it's when you do happy, one I guess mistake I've seen a lot with some of my students lately, is that happy is never about the specific words in the document. It has nothing to do with the words that are said. What you're trying to do is say, what ulterior motives might they have when they speak, and then kind of applying that or using that as a lens then to look at the document. So as I said earlier, these in pairs, they can be shuffled anywhere around the paragraph. So you might, for instance, do like your first document and argument, and then do happy, and then do evidence beyond the documents, and then come back and do one more document. You could do it in that order, or you could lead with evidence beyond the documents, and then a first document, happy on that document, another document. Whatever order you want to do is great, as long as you do each element. Body paragraph 2 is exactly the same as body paragraph 1. So use 2 documents, one piece of evidence beyond the documents, and one round of happy, this sourcing. Okay. Now, if you do this, I want to pause for a moment. We've only done 3 body paragraphs, but if you look at this top line, if you've done everything well so far, you're at 9 out of the 10 points on this essay. So if you know, this is just a bit of advice, but if you're kind of a slow writer and your main concern going into this is, I don't know if I'll get through it, just target doing those first 3 paragraphs. If you have a good contextualization and claim, and you have used now through 2 body paragraphs, you've used 4 documents, you've made an argument using each of those 4, you've brought in 2 pieces of outside evidence beyond the documents, and you've done this sourcing happy twice, and you've done it all well, you will have a 9 out of 10, which is great. Okay, so that's something to consider. Now, if you are able to go beyond, so look at your clock, make sure you start a clock at the beginning of this thing, but it's decision time. Do we have enough time left for another body paragraph? If we do, we're going to write a 3rd body paragraph, and there's 2 reasons for this. Number 1, we're going to shoot for that 10th point, which is about complexity, and also, by doing this extra body paragraph, we can buy some insurance just in case we've misinterpreted a document, just in case some of our evidence beyond the documents is insufficient, or just in case one of our versions of happy sourcing doesn't meet the requirements. We can buy some insurance. Okay, so let's do that. So this would be your optional body paragraph 3, wherein we're trying to earn the complexity point. So your topic sentence is going to be something like, basically all you're going to do is acknowledge that the opposite claim from the one you took could be considered true. So you could say some historians might see things another way and think that, and then just state the counter argument. But notice here that you still have to set it up like this is your essay and you're making your claim. So even though you're admitting that another view of the evidence is possible, you still have to be making your own argument. Some of my students lately have turned in essays where they just go into this and basically they have a body paragraph that defends their claim and then a body paragraph that equally defends the other side, without ever saying that, like, but my side's better. So this whole time you still need to be setting up the superiority of your own claim. So your topic sentence will say, well, some other historians might think this, and here's use a document or possibly 2, and say, if you look at this document, this person says this, and that could support this counter argument. You can also, if you want, bring in evidence beyond the documents that could, and then again, use it to support the counter argument. You could also use happy. And one thing with doing the happy sourcing on a document in this paragraph is you can actually use that as a way to undermine this interpretation. So for instance, if you're using the document and you say, well, in this document, so-and-so says this, then you come back and say, but, they're writing from a point of view of such and such, and so they're obviously going to say, you can kind of undermine it that way, or they're writing to an audience of whatever, and therefore they're only saying it because that's what that audience wants to hear. It's not what's really true, whatever. So happy is actually a good way to undermine the alternate interpretation of this document. Anyway, you should also close this paragraph with a sentence where you say, so even though this other view is possible, my claim is clearly better because whatever. You need to kind of continue to make the argument that your claim is superior. You can't just leave this paragraph as like a great and unchallenged argument against yourself, at which point it no longer is really part of your essay. All right. Now, as I said before, this is the previous screen. Do we have enough time for a body paragraph? Hopefully we do. But if we don't, and if we still have time left down at the bottom here, do we have enough time left to write a conclusion? All right. So if we do, our closing paragraph should be an inverted version of our first paragraph. We're going to start with our claim and line of reasoning, and then have contextualization. A couple of notes on this. Your claim in this case, a lot of students, I think from their LA training, just want to have a closing of some kind, and so they just throw one down there. But unless your claim or thesis right here is better than your first one, don't even bother with it. There's no points to be gained. Like, the rubric doesn't punish you for not having one. What the rubric can do is reward you if this one is good and your first one wasn't. And that often happens. I've graded enough AP essays in my life to know that when you first start writing under the crunch of time, you don't always have a clear idea in your head when you start of where you're going. But as you use the evidence, and as you've now had nearly 45 minutes to think about it, your own thinking has become clarified to you. And so now you're much better able to state a clear claim and to state your line of reasoning. So if you can do that, then by all means include that here. If you can't, then don't even bother with it. Another thing you could shoot for is contextualization, in which case this could be broader events after this time period. Okay, and so what did the events of this topic lead to? And again, you need to be specific and factual. You can't just say like, and so things were changed for it. Like, I have two least favorite ends of essays that drive me insane. The first one is writing, I ran out of time, because all it means is you mismanage your time. Like, every single person has the exact same amount of time, so don't write that. But my second least favorite is when somebody says, and that's what made us the people we are today. It's just such a say nothing. People love saying that, but it's garbage. It doesn't actually say anything. So don't close with any nonsense about like, and the world would never be the same. Yeah, we got it. History changes. But specific things. So what events came after, what facts? Again, think about what words would be put on a deck of flashcards. Those are the things you want. Oh, hey, that led to this particular war. That led to this particular fight between these countries. That led to the rise of the peasantry and the gaining of rights in the law of whatever. Okay, so be specific if you're going to do this. All right. A few final thoughts and the main thing is that I want to say at the end here is just before you start, I guess if you have any particular limitations or weaknesses, make sure that you acknowledge those in your own mind and account for them. For instance, if you know you're a slow writer, I would not encourage you at all to shoot for like a third paragraph or a closing paragraph, or even have that in your mind. Now, if you write fast and you suddenly discover that you've got 12 minutes left when you're done, great. But if you know you're kind of a slow and methodical writer and you're just thoughtful that way, that's awesome. I encourage you to go for an introductory paragraph and two really good body paragraphs as shown here. All right, and that's it. Okay, 3 total paragraphs. Shoot for your 9 out of 10. Another example of this would be, let's say that you haven't had time, you've been busy, you've been emotionally struggling with the quarantine, you've been working at ACE, 14 hours a day, whatever it is, and like maybe you haven't written any practices and you just straight up don't know how to do the sourcing. You don't really get what Happy is or how it works. Happy takes a lot of time to do. Like that sourcing, yeah, it's worth 2 points out of 10, but it takes a lot of effort. So if you don't really understand how it works, I would just straight up skip it. Like don't shoot for it, because you've got to do it correctly at least 2 times to get those points. Like don't even bother. Focus on the other 8 points and do the absolute best you can with those 8. And don't worry about attempting to learn a new skill with a 45-minute time limit. It's just not there. Or maybe you run into another possibility is like you run into a topic and you just don't know anything about the topic for whatever reason. You were gone that day, you slept through that class, or we didn't cover it that deeply, whatever. You just don't know much about the topic. Okay, so you're probably going to be limited in your evidence beyond the documents, right? So contextualization you should be able to pull together because you can draw from enough time. But with the evidence beyond the documents, that may be hard. Like you don't know anything about the subject. So what I would do is just skip it. I would go and like, all right, I'm not going to do evidence beyond the documents. I'm going to go write this essay and I'm going to shoot for the other 8 points that are available. And then if I've got like 10 minutes left and I've done everything well, yeah, then I'm going to hop on the internet and I'm going to see if I can find, like, I'm going to look this subject up. I'm going to see if I can find a thing to talk about real quick. And I'm going to shove it in the middle of some paragraph where it kind of fits. But I'm not like starting out mentally. I'm not even worried about that. It's a non-issue. It only becomes an issue if I say, okay, I'm done. And I look up and I've got 14 minutes left. Like, okay, now I can go research. So anyway, this is my advice. I think if you print this outline, especially if you can print it in color and keep it next to you or pull it up on another screen, I think you will do well. All right. So I wish you all well. It's been driving me insane not to be able to spend more time with you and check in with you and guide you more, I guess, hand in hand than I have been. But I appreciate, especially all those of you who've been sending in practice essays and things like that. I'm going to go back to grading those. I'm going to post this, and I'm going to wish you very good luck this afternoon and congratulate you, because before the sun goes down today, you will be done with your AP European History exam. And no matter how well it goes, that's always a pretty good feeling.